You guys, we're still running our 3K. I can't. Hello, my friends. This is Ro. Welcome back to my channel. I have a prison-related video for you guys today. I know we've been doing a lot of fun, different content, and then a whole bunch of lives. So I wanted to sit down and just do a good old-fashioned story time. It's been a while. So I want to talk to you guys today about the difference between jail and prison visits. So I've been to visit at 3 different types of facilities. I went to years ago, before I was with Adam, my ex-boyfriend was in the Marines, and him and a whole bunch of people were involved in an ecstasy ring. So he didn't go down on this case yet, but we had a really good friend who was locked up in the brig in the Marines at Camp Lejeune. So I went to visit there a couple of times, and then I've been to county jail and I've been to prison visit in the federal system. So I'd like to talk through the differences between those, the differences between jail and prison, especially from the outside visitor's perspective. So as far as my visit at the Marine jail, at the brig, I'm going to go through what I remember, but this was so long ago. I think I was in my early 20s, and now I am not. So I'm going to go through what I remember, but I don't remember them caring really about what you wore. I could wear a regular bra with wire. I think I was just wearing my regular street clothes. And you walked in and you had to fill out paperwork and you had to bring your driver's license with you, like most other jail visits. And then they walked us through, we waited for a couple of minutes, and then they walked us through this it was like this room that, I guess like a hallway, but it locked on both ends. So they locked us in there. They had all the visitors in there. And then when the doors opened up on the other side, when you came through processing, you were locked in that little hallway room. They opened up on the other side, and it was kind of like a big cafeteria looking room. And there were different tables, and the chairs were set up for one around each side of these small tables, and you just waited for the visitor to come out, and they came out. They didn't really care about touching or anything like that, although I was with my boyfriend and we were visiting our friend who was locked up. So I remember hugging him hello, but I don't remember anything about touching or holding hands or anything like that at this Marine facility, because it wasn't a loved one like that. It was a very good friend. So I don't really remember too much more about that visit, but I just remember it being a huge room. I remember it being on the Marine base. This was Camp Lejeune, like I said, and everybody was there. It was people who were there for a few days, pre-trial, and then all the way up to people who were lifers at this one facility. I remember they were talking about, this was back in the early 2000s, and I remember him talking about TVs in the cells and that kind of stuff. So I guess I can ask more questions of people and find out more about Marine jail visits or the brig military jail visits, but that's all I know about that. So we'll put that aside. So my next visit was at a county jail. This was back probably 2008, 2009. I was not visiting Adam. I was with one of my friends. And I remember that I had the afternoon off of work that day. And she called me and she told me where she was going. And I said, well, I'll come with you. So I left work wearing my work clothes. And it's so crazy. I have this weird memory. I can't remember what I ate for dinner last night, but I could tell you exactly what I wore places. And I will remember this. I don't know why. It's burned in my memory like it was yesterday. So your girl went through a preppy phase, which is really funny because Italian girl from Jersey, I do not belong in preppy clothes. It's just not the right look for me. But I was going through a little preppy phase at that point, and I was wearing a white button-down shirt with a little yellow sweater on top of it. And actually, it wasn't. It was a two-piece connected, right? And just a pair of simple jeans, and probably ballerina flats were really big at that time. Regular bra again. So this was at Essex County Jail in New Jersey. In Newark, New Jersey. And we went, and I remember there was a huge parking lot, and we parked, and then we went up this little ramp into the facility, and it was this big processing room, and there was an aisle up the middle, and there were chairs, like plastic chairs on one side and then chairs on the other side. And then as you walked up to the front, it was a pretty big room. Think like an auditorium in high school, but it was all on one level. So I guess think like a cafeteria again in high school, that size, but set up like a processing room. So then there was a big front desk when you got to the front of that room, and the officers were back there, and there was glass. And so you had to fill out your paperwork, and then they sent you over to these cubbies on this one side of the room, and you had to put your stuff in these cubbies, but there were no doors on these cubbies and there were no keys. So it was kind of leave it at your own risk. And here's the thing, in Newark, where this facility is, it's kind of in an industrial section in the back of Newark, but Newark is not the best area. And so you had to take your chances. You either left your stuff in your car or you left it in those cubbies. And I remember that we left our stuff, we locked it into the trunk of her car, and then we put the keys in those cubbies and just kind of, Hail Married it. So didn't matter what we wore, underwire bra, I had to walk through everyone had to walk through a metal detector. I believe you had to take off your shoes and your belt. Got through the metal detector, no problem, obviously not set too high. And I remember the feeling at the county jail. This was my first time at a real visit, like back at college in the brig. I had no idea what I was going through. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just a young, dumb kid that didn't know where I was. So this was really my first taste in Newark at Essex County. And I just remember there were so many people there, and I was so anxious and I was so nervous, and this facility seemed enormous. This jail seemed huge to me. And everybody there, which I thought was so interesting, knew each other. There had to be hundreds of people there, it felt like. And everybody was like, hey, how you doing? Either they mean mugged each other and they didn't get along, or they were like, hey, it's been a while, how have you been? They all knew each other from the street. So I felt like this outsider. I was anxious. I was nervous. We're walking in. We had to go up this elevator, and then they took us into this there was this long hallway and then a waiting room with chairs lined up, kind of like when you were waiting at the airport. And it seemed like we waited forever. To be honest, I have no idea how long we waited, but they took us finally, when it was our turn, they took us down this long hallway, and there were these rooms set up on the hallway, down this hallway. And there were small rooms, but think about like much bigger, but think about when you're in high school. You're in school and there's this hallway and there's classrooms along every wall. That's how it kind of felt and looked, but of course on a much grander scale and much more institutionalized. So they take us to the room that we're going in, and it was this small little room, and there was glass, and then on this side of the wall, there was no phones at this place. There was this metal vent on this side of the wall, and it had a whole bunch of holes in it, and that's what you had to talk through. You had to lean up against it, and you had to talk through it so the person, the inmate, when he comes out on the other side of the glass, can hear you. So eventually he came out, and what I thought was so interesting about this was you could see the whole pod and like the day room behind him. So there was glass, and they were up a level, but down below there were all of the guys watching TV, sitting in their chairs, doing whatever they're doing, gawking up to see if they could see the visitors. And what the impression that I got and I felt was that I was at the zoo watching animals in their unnatural habitat. And at first I thought it was so interesting, and I started watching, but then it took a couple minutes and I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm violating these people. I feel like I'm literally watching animals at the zoo in their unnatural habitat. And it kind of broke my heart. Like, we're looking at these people like they're science experiments and their projects. So anyway, this was my friend's boyfriend. I was friendly with him. To be honest, we were friendly enough at arm's length on the surface for her. We never really truly got along. That's a story for a completely separate time. But I just remember watching them. My heart felt so good. The way that they both lit up when they saw each other. So when he came out, he was wearing whatever jumpsuit he was wearing. I don't really remember. And her boyfriend was always bald. And I just remember he looked so pale. He had already been locked up for a year in this county jail, waiting for sentencing to go to do his time at a federal prison. So I just remember he looked really pale. He was a bodybuilder when I knew him on the street. Huge guy. They always told us, watch out for that guy. Before she started dating him, before they met, I remember being out at this place at the Jersey Shore called the Tiki Bar. And it's this long pier, and it's outside, and it leads to the ocean, and there's a bar around it, and there's an upstairs and a downstairs. So me, this girlfriend, and a few of our friends, and actually my friend's parents were hanging out there. And this guy that we went to go visit before he got locked up, obviously we didn't know him, walked by, and my friend said, look at that huge, enormous guy with the prison tattoos. You guys stay away from him, which was kind of game on for my friend, and that's another story for a whole different time. But the whole point is, he was a huge 300-pound bodybuilder, and when we went to go see him a couple of years later, a year after being locked up in county jail, he just looked so thin. He was still muscular because he had built all that muscle over those years, but he looked thin and he looked very pale because in county jail, they're not getting outside. They're not really seeing the sun. And so to me, and from everything I've heard, I've never done time in jail, in prison, anywhere. I've never been arrested, but it's always, jail is kind of, it's very, it's supposed to be a short-term thing, although there's people that are there long-term, but it's a lot more harsh. Prison is more settled in, like home, as much as it's still jail and it's still prison and it's still home, not home, but it's where you can kind of settle in, you can move around a little more, you can get outside a little more, you can do a lot more stuff. There's programs, there's gyms, there's weights. The county jail, it's very different. It's just, you're right there, you're not moving around, you're not getting outside. And that's what I saw there. But anyway, back to the visit, because this is getting wordy, of course. I just remember the looks on both of their faces when they saw each other. Pure admiration, pure love, my heart just leaped out of my chest because the person that I love so much and have not touched in over a year is on the other side of this glass. So they were talking really close to the glass, and I remember she would get up as close as she could to that little metal vent on the side of the wall. It was only about this thick, and it had, like I'm telling you, it had tons of just dots and holes in there for the air and the noise to go through. So he would have his ear up, and she would get up there and she would talk, and then they would smile and laugh, and then he would get up and talk, and then he would ask me a question, and I would kind of walk around to her, and I would go up and talk, and we would kind of sign language it. And I don't honestly remember how long that visit lasted, but I remember it being quick. I remember it feeling like it was so much process for such little time. I want to say for such little reward, but that's because I wasn't the loved one on the other side of the glass. I was the friend on the other side of the glass. I'm saying reward for her, like ROI, return on the investment, because spending 2 seconds with the person you love on the other side of glass is such a reward. So that was my first visit at the county, my one and only visit, I should say, at the county jail. And then from there, I believe, I don't remember, it's kind of fuzzy, it was so long ago, but I believe they just told us visit was over. They took him back. She, of course, was upset. They just walked us down. There were other people waiting. It was kind of like this, just kind of like a factory, like a line of people waiting, using the room, next. We walked out, we went to the car, we left. A couple months later, he was transferred to federal prison, and that was that. So let's fast forward to a few years later. I get back in touch with Adam. Now I'm going to my first visit at prison. It was a federal prison. So it was very different. And I do have, you guys, a video that I'll link up in the card somewhere about my first visit ever. And I walk through the process of what it was like, my emotions, what I did, the exact process, not only physically, but emotionally, what I went through, seeing him again for the first time in so many years, and all the emotions that came with that, and then what it was like with all the people around me, and what it was like leaving him. So I'm not going to get into that for the sake of time on this video, but I'll post that. I mean, I'll link that there and you guys can watch it. So at federal prison, it's different. A federal prison, or a prison, and I'm sure that it's different across the board in every state, but there are rules as far as dress code. I could not get through the metal detector in an underwire bra. So, and I couldn't wear sleeveless. And thank God I had a friend who had visited this facility already once before, because it was September. It was Labor Day weekend the first time I went to go visit Adam. And I would have worn probably sleeveless. I might have worn a little sundress with open-toed shoes and a wired bra. You couldn't wear, you had to have sleeves on your shirt. You couldn't wear dresses that were too short. You had to wear closed-toed shoes, and you could not have wire in your bra. So there's definitely a different dress code at the county jail. I'm sorry, at the prison versus the county jail, where I went to visit, and you guys, again, disclaimer, this is different across the board, but there was no dress code. You did have to take off your belt and your shoes to get through the metal detector, but I wore what I wore to work. My friend wore what she wore to work. I don't remember or recall seeing them turning anybody away for what they were wearing, but I could be wrong. If you guys visited a county jail, or if you've had experience visiting a county jails, put it in the comment below for people who are coming up behind us, finding these videos, and need to learn from us. So, there was that. You had to take off all of your jewelry, your belt, your shoes, and you had to pass through the metal detector, and then you were processed into visit. So when you go into visit, where I went to USP Allenwood, which is a U.S. penitentiary, my very first visit. And so there you had to fill out paperwork. They processed you through the metal detector. They processed your paperwork. You walked down a long corridor. It wasn't very school, institutional vibe. It was more like courthouse. It's more like a courthouse, government, municipal type building in this front building that you would walk through. So it was this long hallway. There were bars that I saw. So they processed you also here into this little foyer type of room. Bars, like an electronic door with bars would shut in front of you. And then they would have to, at the control room, they would have to call it in. Then the control room would open those bars. You would walk through. That's where you went down the long corridor. And then you went up a huge set of stairs into this visit room. This visit room was actually gorgeous. It was all ceiling, all like arboretum, like windows throughout the ceiling. There was the cop's desk up front. There were square tables. And then again with these, you had kind of just like those metal chairs, with the metal rods down the back, and then the plastic in the front. The plastic on the back and the plastic on the bottom. They were on the more comfortable side compared to where I go now, which I'll tell you in a second. But for around each table, there were vending machines, there was drinks, there was food you could get, and you could walk up. You could actually we could go to the bathroom. We could get up and down, visitors, as we please. The guys came out from the back. It was a huge, enormous room. It had to hold a couple hundred people because there were a couple thousand people at this facility, so they needed it to hold it. And then the cops were strict during visit. You were allowed one embrace and one kiss hello, one embrace and one kiss goodbye. Other than that, you could not touch each other. You could not touch hands. You could not touch feet under the table. No touching whatsoever, or your visit was terminated. So, not that it's more strict at the prison, it's just that you don't have to experience that at the jail because you have a huge thing of glass separating you. And at prison, you don't see any other inmates, you don't see any more of the facility. The visit room is completely separate from the housing units. So at least, again, this is where I go. It could be different everywhere. They come out of a back room. So they'll come out of their housing units. They go down into the visit room, the back of the visit room, where they're called one by one to be processed. They're strip searched out of there. They used to put their own clothes back on until about a month ago. They're given jumpsuits and Crocs, so they have to put those on. I'll talk about that in another video too, and how it's kind of emotionally a little bit difficult for the guys to go from wearing their own clothes and their khakis and their boots to jumpsuits and Crocs, and how it was kind of humiliating for him. But we'll go into that in another video. So basically you're changing, you're getting strip searched, you're coming out of a back door, and all we as a visitor see is that door open and shut. And then when they leave, so we have our 6-hour visit. Then when they leave, it's the same thing. They're processed out. We're leaving first, so we don't even see them getting processed out. But they go back into that little room. They get strip searched again. They change their clothes. They put on their own clothes now. And then, or back before they were putting on jumpsuits and Crocs, they would take off their clothes. They would get strip searched, the whole like bend over and cough deal. And then they would put their clothes back on. They would put their boots back on, and then they would go back and go about with their day. They would have to be back in their cells for 4 o'clock count because visit ended at 3, and then there was a census count at 4. So really, at the end of the day, that is the difference between jail and prison visits. It's a lot more relaxed, but a lot more strict, if that makes sense, at prison. Jail is behind glass. It's going to be quick. It's not going to be they're not going to be on top of you as much because you can't exchange anything. What they're worried about and why they're on top of you at prison visit is because you're you have a contact visit, you're not behind glass, there's nothing between you, so they're worried about you passing off drugs, they're worried about you touching each other inappropriately, they're worried about that kind of stuff. That's why they're on you more. But if I had to choose between the two, prison visit all day long, because it's a little sense of normalcy for us as a visitor. You can touch them. You know, oh, when he went down to the medium, to the FCI, to the medium security level where Adam is now, you can touch each other's hands. When I first started going, you could actually lean your head on their shoulder. You can't do that anymore. They've gotten a little bit more strict, as in their defense, drugs have come into the prison more and more and more through the visit room. So we can't do that as much anymore, but you're still there in person, able to touch them at least once or twice, hello and goodbye. And you get 6 hours with them face to face in the flesh. And it is so amazing and wonderful for their psyche. It's amazing and wonderful to nurture our relationships, to be able to just get with each other and talk for 6 hours. So if you have something that you need to discuss, a 15-minute phone call, then you get hung up on. If you're discussing something heated or discussing something legal or something very emotional, that's really difficult. And then they run out of minutes. So at this time, you have 6 hours to talk through it all, to be in their face, to cry if you need to cry, to laugh with each other, to hug each other at the end, and then to feel all fueled up and your love tank is full for the next one. So I'll talk to you guys also about leaving visit and what I've coined the post-visit blues, or now Strong Prison Lives and Families community calls the PVBs, which is funny because doesn't that sound like a VD, like an STD? But it's when you leave visit and the first couple of days after visit, or the first week after visit, especially if you're not going very frequently, you get a little bit of like I can't say that. You go through a little bit of a more sad, depressing couple of days afterwards, because you just left the love of your life and you have to go back and figure out how you're going to live your normal day-to-day life. So that's it. If you guys have any questions, if you want me to evolve more on any of this, talk through it anymore with you guys, if you have topics that this kind of jarred, oh, hey, I want to know about this, I never thought to ask Ro this, comment below, let me know. Also, please make sure that you like this video. It is a free way that you can help your girl out, just to show YouTube that this content needs to be shown to everybody who needs to see it. Because remember the day that you were going through this alone, or if you're not a prison lifer and you're just trying to learn about, you find this entertaining, when you were trying to learn, then you needed somebody out there. You needed to find these videos. So do that for me. It's nothing. It's just a free way to help me out. And then also make sure that you subscribe to this video and ding that little notification bell so you never miss any of my future content. Keep staying. Oh, one more thing before I go. We're still running our 3K subscriber giveaway. My heart is so full that we have 3,000 people subscribed to this channel. So make sure if you're not subscribed, you do that. You scroll back and I'll put it in the cards to my 3K subscriber fun video, but also the giveaway details are on there. You have to subscribe to this channel, like that video, and comment under that video. We're going until May 20th, and I'll be giving away a $25 Amazon gift card as my thank you to you guys, because you are amazing. I love you guys. I will see you in the next one. Keep staying strong. Keep loving strong. Keep supporting one another through this journey, because you're one day closer to it all being behind you. Lots of love from my heart to yours. I will see you beautiful ladies and gentlemen in the next one.